I stepped into the grand hall of my cousin's wedding, expecting laughter, clinking glasses, and warm embraces. Instead, the air hit me like ice. Something was wrong. Whispers curled through the room like smoke, low and venomous, carrying fragments of sentences I wasn't supposed to hear. Margaret caused this. She ruined everything. My heart thudded as I followed the murmurs, my gaze locking on her. My auntie, Margaret. She stood stiffly near the buffet, shoulders tense, face pale, as if she could feel every accusing eye burning into her. Before I could reach her, someone stepped forward, a cousin I barely recognized in this moment, and leveled a public accusation that froze the room. Margaret messed up the seating arrangements. She completely ignored the planner's instructions. The voice rang out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Margaret's lips parted, a silent plea forming, but her words faltered, swallowed by the sharp laughter and murmurs around her. I watched shock and shame dance across her face as the family's eyes pierced her like knives. My stomach knotted painfully, each heartbeat echoing with her humiliation. A distant uncle, leaning against the doorway, chuckled cruelly. Honestly, Margaret, how do you even manage simple things? You've ruined yet another plan. The words were not just criticism, they were verdicts, declaring her incompetent in front of everyone. I felt a surge of anger rise in my chest, demanding I intervene, but my feet were glued to the floor. The fear of escalating the situation, of making her suffering worse, held me frozen. Margaret finally spoke, her voice trembling, fragile yet desperate. I tried to. Her words were sharp fragments, lost in the cacophony of laughter and sneers. Someone's phone rang nearby, and in a humiliating instant, I saw a recording start. The camera capturing her stammering, her vulnerability, her shame in high definition. A young cousin leaned close to a friend, smirking, whispering false details, painting Margaret as careless, incompetent, unworthy. The lies dripped venom into the ears of everyone present, amplifying her torment. I felt my chest tighten as tears welled in her eyes, rolling slowly down her cheeks, unnoticed by anyone but me. Her pride, once so strong, was crumbling under the weight of public judgment. Every insult landed with precision, every laugh piercing deeper than any blade. And in that moment, I made a quiet vow. I would uncover every shred of truth, expose every lie, and restore Margaret's dignity. I would not allow this humiliation to define her. Not here. Not ever. I can still feel the quiet strength Margaret carried with her, even back when I was a child. She was always there, a steady presence. Soft hands wiping away tears after school bullies humiliated me. Her voice calm and unwavering when I felt cornered by the world. No one ever saw the weight she bore, the sacrifices she made silently to shield our family from chaos. Memories flood in. Her skipping meals so we could eat, staying up late to fix mistakes no one even noticed, carrying burdens alone so we wouldn't feel them. She was always the one they blamed, the scapegoat when things went wrong, yet never once did she lash out. She absorbed insult and gossip like armor, silently enduring, her pride intact even as others tried to crush it. I remember her whispering to me once about money troubles she never shared with anyone, how she hid debts and unpaid bills to protect the family from worry. And the past wasn't free of false accusations either. A cousin once tried to steal a piece of inheritance, pointing fingers at Margaret, and no one defended her. She faced ridicule and exclusion at every event. Smiles polite but cold, whispers that cut deeper than any knife. Reflecting on all of it, I see the pattern now. Her time, her energy, even her personal happiness. Everything undermined, overlooked, treated as invisible. And today, as she stands accused again, the betrayal by our relatives echoes all those past injustices. My chest tightens with a deep aching wound, anger bubbling not just for her, but for every moment her sacrifices were ignored. Her words come back to me, spoken softly years ago. Justice doesn't always need a loud voice. The humiliation she endured today isn't isolated. It's the peak of years of silent injustice. Guilt claws at me for not acting sooner, but it sharpens into a determination now. A relentless need to expose the truth, to ensure that Margaret's resilience finally gets the recognition it deserves. I didn't confront anyone right away. I went quiet. Dangerous quiet. I started collecting everything. Old messages, buried emails, photos no one thought mattered. Every timestamp, every forwarded text, every tiny detail that could prove Margaret was being framed. I did it silently, methodically, while the rest of the family acted like judges who had already made their decision. They stayed smug. Some of them didn't even try to hide it. Whenever Margaret walked past, I heard the low laughs, the muttered comments meant just loud enough to sting. She kept her head down, pretending not to hear, but I could see it in her shoulders, how each step felt heavier than the last. At another family gathering, it finally boiled over. A casual comment turned sharp. A joke turned into an accusation. Someone said her name with that same tone again, implying blame without saying it outright. The room went tense. Voices rose. Margaret tried to defend herself, but they talked over her like she wasn't even there. That's when I noticed the pattern. Cousins whispering in tight circles, aunts exchanging looks that said everything without a single word, alliances forming right in front of us. This wasn't confusion. This was coordinated. Margaret's anxiety started bleeding through the cracks. Her hands shook when she spoke. Her voice wavered even when she tried to sound calm. I could feel time running out. If I didn't act soon, the story would harden into truth, and no amount of evidence would undo it. I confronted the main accuser privately. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I just asked simple questions. They smiled, too confidently, denied everything, acted untouchable, like the lie had already won. But I heard it. The hesitation. The pauses that didn't belong. Details that shifted just enough to expose cracks beneath the surface. Their story wasn't solid. It was rehearsed. That night, Margaret finally started opening up to me. Not dramatically, not with tears, just quiet confessions, whispered like secrets she was afraid would break if spoken too loudly. Her trust sat heavy between us, unspoken but absolute. I stayed up late, night after night, combing through receipts and messages, lining up dates, reconstructing the timeline piece by piece. What they claimed couldn't physically have happened the way they said it did. The deeper I went, the clearer it became. This wasn't just gossip. This could erase her reputation forever. Then I heard it. A recording. Voices I recognized. Laughing. Twisting the story on purpose. Planning how to make it stick. My chest went tight. My pulse roared in my ears. Every lie I uncovered poured fuel on something fierce inside me. This wasn't about defending Margaret anymore. This was about making sure the truth hit back harder than the humiliation ever did. The phone rang late at night, sharp against the silence of my apartment. I answered cautiously, and a familiar voice whispered urgently on the other end. A former family friend I hadn't spoken to in years. "I have something you need to see. Proof no one else has," they said. My pulse jumped. Finally, a lead that could change everything. I rushed to Margaret's side. We sat in a dimly lit room, the only sound our heartbeats pounding like war drums. On the table lay documents, recordings, messages, all pieces that, when combined, told the truth the family had tried to bury. A surge of power ran through me. The real story, unfiltered and undeniable, was finally in our hands. My hand shook as I started drafting a plan, carefully calculating each step, each word, ensuring Margaret wouldn't be humiliated further in public. Every detail mattered. Then I realized we weren't alone. A silent ally had been watching all along, someone with influence and loyalty, willing to step in at the right moment. That knowledge steadied my nerves. And then it hit us. The motive behind the lies, the accusations. Jealousy. A cousin wanted leverage over a family business, and Margaret had stood in the way. The anger, the betrayal, the calculated deception. It all snapped into clarity. Margaret's calm returned, subtle but unmistakable. She leaned back, trust in her eyes, ready to let the plan unfold. I rehearsed quietly, words and timing sharp in my mind, my adrenaline spiking. This wasn't just about clearing her name anymore. It was about reclaiming her dignity, her pride, her life. We agreed. The exposure had to be strategic. Public enough for everyone to see, undeniable enough to leave no room for doubt. The weight of the moment pressed down on me. Years of hidden injustice about to be corrected, her pain finally met with justice. The phone call ended with a quiet promise. The proof would speak for itself. And in that silence, I felt it. The unstoppable force of truth ready to strike. The family dinner was set. Plates clinked, wine glasses caught the soft glow of the chandelier, and laughter floated across the room. No one suspected that tonight everything would change. Everyone was gathered, unaware that the carefully collected truth was about to strike. I began slowly, casually, planting tiny seeds of doubt. "I noticed some dates don't line up," I said, letting my voice float over the table. "It's strange, isn't it, how the timeline keeps shifting?" Eyes flickered toward the accuser, some narrowing, some confused. Margaret sat beside me, calm and composed, her eyes finding mine. In that gaze, I felt the silent conversation. "We're ready. We can do this." She projected quiet strength, a stillness that anchored the storm about to break. I laid the proof on the table. Messages, recordings, documents, each piece cutting through the lies like a scalpel. "This," I said softly, "is what actually happened." Gasps rippled across the room. Relatives shifted in their seats, eyes darting between Margaret and the accuser, disbelief twisting their faces. The accuser's confidence began to crumble. Their smile faltered. Sweat appeared on their brow. Words stuck in their throat as the facade they had relied on shattered under the weight of undeniable truth. Margaret spoke then, her voice calm but unwavering. "I didn't do this. I never did. And now you all see it." She held their gaze, reclaiming her voice in front of everyone who had doubted her. The silence that followed was electric. It was an emotional showdown. Her dignity, once stripped away, now radiated through the room. The accuser's arrogance dissolved, replaced by shame so deep it made them shrink in their chair. I noticed relatives murmuring apologies, some too stunned to even form words. I highlighted the legal angles subtly. A contract document proving deliberate deception, the implication of consequences unspoken but clear. Financial accountability was touched on next, quietly but firmly. The accuser owed Margaret restitution for the harm caused. The reversal was complete. Public humiliation had flipped. The accuser was exposed, stripped of credibility, while Margaret stood tall, unbroken, her quiet strength now recognized by all. A rush of justice surged through me, watching years of hidden pain crystallize into visible victory. Margaret's proud, serene smile contrasted sharply with the accuser's unraveling composure. By the end, the room hung heavy with truth. Silence marked the power shift. The emotional climax was undeniable. Dignity restored, lies exposed, and justice, finally, served. Margaret retreated to a quiet room, closing the door behind her, the tension in her shoulders finally easing. She drew in a deep, steadying breath, and I could see the weight of humiliation lifting, replaced by a fragile, hard-won relief. I sat beside her, our silence speaking volumes. Relief mingled with pride, but beneath it lingered a sharp edge of anger at the betrayal she had endured for so long. I reached out, placing a hand over hers, and in that small gesture, we shared a moment of unspoken understanding. Through the walls, the subtle shift began. Whispers carried across the house, acknowledgments of her innocence threaded into conversations that had once carried judgment. I noticed former skeptics approaching her with genuine apologies, their tones softening, their faces shedding disbelief for recognition. Margaret's reputation, once battered and dismissed, began to mend. Respect replaced ridicule, smiles carried a new warmth, and the subtle nods of approval felt like victory in motion. Meanwhile, the accuser remained isolated, their previous influence eroded completely under the undeniable weight of evidence. In the quiet aftermath, Margaret and I shared a heartfelt moment. No words were necessary. Gratitude, relief, and love passed silently between us, the bonds of trust fortified by everything we had endured together. I reflected on the journey. Every pang of anger, every hour of careful planning, the long nights piecing together proof, and the explosive moment of exposure that finally delivered vindication. The energy in the household shifted, subtle but palpable, as lessons about patience, truth, and quiet resilience rippled through the family. Margaret and I exchanged a vow, quiet but resolute. We would protect each other from future manipulation, no matter how subtle or insidious. The thrill of justice lingered, calm, strategic, irrevocable, a quiet satisfaction that no words could capture. Finally, Margaret laughed softly, a sound I hadn't heard for years. Light, unrestrained, free. A sound once stifled by shame, now blossoming, marking the true end of her suffering, and the beginning of her reclamation. I look directly into the camera, my voice steady, though my eyes glisten with the weight of what has passed. I take a breath and begin recounting the ordeal, each word measured, each pause deliberate. Sometimes those who seem absent are holding everything together, I say, letting the truth of those words sink in, emphasizing the patience and quiet strength that often goes unnoticed. I reflect on the subtle power of evidence, how strategic truth can dismantle lies, and how emotional intelligence triumphs over impulsive revenge. I speak of how restraint, observation, and careful planning can turn humiliation into justice. I share the importance of recognizing the unsung heroes in our lives before it's too late, the ones who sacrifice silently, who endure in ways no one else sees, and who deserve acknowledgement long before crisis forces it into the light. I recount the roller coaster of emotions, the shame that cut like knives, the anger that simmered beneath the surface, and finally, the sweet, undeniable release of justice and vindication. Stand up for truth, I urge, even when it is quiet, even when it feels impossible. Sometimes the loudest victories are the ones no one cheers for, yet they change everything. A montage begins in my mind. Margaret smiling quietly, the family beginning to reconcile. Moments of small, quiet triumph unfolding in the aftermath. Each frame tells of endurance, of dignity reclaimed, of hidden strength finally recognized. Justice doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be inevitable, I narrate, voice heavy with conviction. I invite viewers subtly to reflect on their own lives, on the overlooked heroes around them, on moments of courage waiting to be acknowledged. The closing shot lingers. Margaret's serene, proud face, eyes steady, a stark contrast to the shadows of humiliation she once endured. My voice softens as the screen fades. Truth finds a way, even in the darkest corners of betrayal. The final frame lingers with a prompt. Share stories of quiet victories, of resilience, of the invisible triumphs that shape lives without ever asking for applause.